It's almost Halloween, so the spooky season is about to come to a close, but before it does, I have to give you my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Gabriel and I love to rank movies. If you can relate, consider hitting that subscribe button. And please know that this list is just my opinion, but I would love to see yours down in the comment section. And just for fun, let me know what you're going to be for Halloween down in the comment section. But with that said, let's get started. Starting off the list, I have Insidious. This movie proves that PG-13 horror movies can be just as scary as R ones. Some moments genuinely scared me, but that's also partly my fault because I was watching it at midnight with all the lights off. It's obviously not going to happen in real life, but it definitely made me jump and delivered on exactly what I wanted. Part 2 is also really good in my opinion, but not as good and doesn't make this list. The acting is really great and believable, and the script was simple but effective. This is just a really scary and great horror movie that I really recommend. Number 9, I have Shaun of the Dead. I know Shaun of the Dead is more of a comedy, but it definitely does cross into the horror genre a little bit, therefore I have to include it on the list. I was laughing more than I was scared, but it's still a horror comedy. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's banter was hilarious, and they worked very well together. Their reaction to the zombies was priceless, and when they first met a zombie, I laughed so hard. This is the best zombie movie I've seen, and one of the best comedies I've seen, and horrors I've seen. There was a lot of over-the-top gore, which was actually hilarious, and the whole film is very fun. Edgar Wright is an amazing director, and I'm really excited to see his full-on horror film Last Night in Soho. Next up in 8th place, I have The Birds. The suspense, the special effects, the acting, and the story all work even 6 decades after The Birds was originally released. This film has such a crazy plot that on paper it sounds like a pretty bad film, but it was honestly fascinating. It's still really suspenseful, and that's even without the music. Yeah, this movie has no score at all, and it's still suspenseful. I'd say that's pretty impressive. Every attack scene was different and really enjoyable, and the whole film is very well crafted by Hitchcock in my opinion. This is one of the many films that really showcases why Alfred Hitchcock is nicknamed the Master of Suspense. Then in 7th place, I have Poltergeist. Poltergeist may be old, sometimes cheesy, but it's still very scary. Nothing terrifying, but some of it kind of creeped me out in the way I wanted it to. It did surprise me with how creepy it was. Some people will pick on this for being outdated, but despite that, I think that it's an amazing haunted house film and has some of the best writing, including how the house was built on top of an old cemetery, but they left the bodies underground. The whimsical score accelerates the eeriness to each scene, and I believe that it does not get enough credit. I would also like to add that the climax at the very end is easily one of my favorite scenes in all horror films. Period. It makes you think that it's about to end, but then it ends with a bang, and it left me so pumped up. In 6th place, I have Child's Play. I loved this. Chucky was such a hateable and annoying villain, but that's what makes him so scary. I wouldn't normally find a play doll that intimidating, but man, he really was in this. It wasn't very scary, but there were many intense and suspenseful scenes. I actually laughed when Chucky was running around on fire, but that's because it was nice to finally see the tables turn. The cast was great in my opinion, and everyone played their roles well, including the young boy. In fact, I actually think the young boy was amazing for his age. He was really cute in this, and whenever he was sad, I was sad for him. Pretty impressive for someone his age, I must say. I do think that a couple kills were rushed, mostly the first one involving the aunt or the babysitter for Andy. I feel like it shouldn't have waited so long to actually show Chucky, but that's a minor nitpick that I can live with. This is obviously one of my favorite horror movies ever, and one that I believe you must see if you're a horror fan. I'm going to be saying that more in this video, so if it sounds repetitive, I'm sorry. It's a bit corny, but that's okay because it is still great. Just cracking the top 5, I have the original Halloween. For a low-budget horror movie from the 1970s that was also directed by a fairly new director, John Carpenter's Halloween was amazing. It was very suspenseful towards the end, and Michael Myers was a great villain. The way he was always silent and never acted like a human in the way he moved was always very eerie, and I really enjoyed it. I know Jamie Lee Curtis isn't a fan of her performance in this, but I personally thought it was really good. I definitely believed her performance, but what I didn't believe, however, was some of the dialogue. It could have been because of how some of the supporting actors delivered their lines, but some still felt unrealistic. Other than that, this movie is practically flawless. I didn't have a single problem with it besides that, and I really loved it all. I know you could say that this movie feels cheesy, but to me, that just adds to the charm of the film. The score is phenomenal and so unique in a horror movie in my opinion. We all have this film to thank for the slasher genre. It's the original film to have a killer on the loose, or at least the classic and the most memorable. This is a must-see for every horror fan, and I'm not just saying that. Number 4 is The Sixth Sense. This is just a masterpiece. First film on the list to get a 10 out of 10, though after a rewatch, Halloween might just make it. Every scene in The Sixth Sense has so much detail, and that makes it so then in later scenes they can make it more suspenseful. The twist at the end was amazing, and I can guarantee that I'm not the first to say that. It's genuinely awesome. I never picked up on the hints they gave us about the twist, and then at the end it was just so unexpected. The child acting was some of the best I've seen, and there are certain scenes that made me jump. This film never was boring and was interesting all the way through. Every cast member did great, and every crew member did great. In summary, this was an amazing thriller and made me want to watch M. Night Shyamalan's other films instantly, which I actually did. It's that good. Winning the bronze medal is Jaws. I've talked about Jaws so many times, and I'm doing it again. I'm kind of at a loss for words, but it's a great movie. It had so many problems while shooting, but they never gave up and continued to make this film. It definitely paid off and made Steven Spielberg one of the greatest directors ever. I'd say this movie is perfect, except for the kind of non-existent ending. It's a masterful film, one that heavily influenced so many films made today. My runner-up is Scream. For a lover of scary movies, Scream was a dream come true. Everything about it I absolutely loved when it comes to the writing, acting, characters, and just everything. This movie is trying to be a spoof on the slasher genre, but ends up being fantastically written, unpredictable, and filled with so many good characters. Sidney Prescott was super likable, and Matthew Lillard's character was awesome. The only character I didn't like was the news reporter. I didn't like her character or the romance with her and Dewey. Other than that, this movie is the perfect slasher. The opening sequence of this is now one of my favorite scenes in all of horror. The dialogue is scarily real and some of the best in a horror film. Drew Barrymore's performance in that scene is phenomenal, 100% believable, and I can't believe how good the opening scene is alone. The way this film subverts your expectations every 5 minutes is crazy, and the writers did such a good job at executing the twist. Sadly, I knew the twist going in due to YouTube thumbnails, but it was still great. The references were great, and the entire film flew by, and it felt like 10 minutes because I enjoyed it so much, and I was invested all the way through. I'm not bluffing when I say that this is one of my new all-time favorite movies. It is seriously so good, and it almost made my favorite horror movie, but I like my number one just a tiny bit more. For honorable mentions, I have Fear Street 1994, Split, The Lighthouse, A Quiet Place, The Visit, The Evil Dead, Happy Death Day, and Friday the 13th. But in first place is Psycho. If you've been following my channel, you knew that this was going to be first place before the video even started. I finally got to see the uncut version, also in Blu-ray, and it just made everything 10 times better. I could watch this movie anytime, any day, any place, any way, and I will love it each and every one of them. I watched it 3 times in less than a year, and it just gets better every rewatch. It never drags and is so compelling. It's in my top 10 of all time and might just be in my top 5. I love how it's in black and white and makes everything more eerie, and I really love that subtle detail. Everything about this movie is perfect, and even if it was released today, it would be a masterpiece, and it comes in at number 1.
Cause I'm too hungry for candy. Even though I think I just heard a scream, and this is much worse than a bad dream. The clouds are covering up the moon, and it feels like I'm headed for my doom. It's a nightmare, not a fantasy, but I'm still hungry.